three, two, one. Right here. 4 tires of fuel.
Wide one.
Outside.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Four and Fuel podcast. We are back for episode 6. We've got a lot to break down today. We promised it last episode. It was under the lights at Martinsville. The rain stayed away. We got a full race in, and what a race it was. But before we get into any of that, we've got a new person joining us on the podcast today. He's the guy I always forget to mention because he comes up with our script and our topics to talk about. We call him our producer, Jordan Missig. Jordan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you for actually having me on the podcast. And I'll ask you before any of these other clowns ask you, how is it on the podcast and how is it for you? You doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so pumped for this episode. We're going to have a fun episode for you guys. Jordan, I want to just ask you, you do some racing in real life. Give a little background to that and how's it going?
Yeah, no, my racing career itself, it's starting off pretty on a rocky start, I will say, with this whole pandemic that's happened, obviously. So, we're in the same boat as all the other forms of racing series, NASCAR and IndyCar as well. But things are starting to get into the right direction. We're kind of set our sights on our first race of the season in about 2 weeks for us. So right now we're kind of just going through all the motions and testing just like a regular team would until we get to the actual racetrack in about 2 weeks.
Sounds good. And then we gotta bring in Wes. Wes, heard you picked up a shift at work today, pushing us back a couple hours. Well, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I did pick up shift. But, hey, now I don't have to work on Tuesday, so I have my Tuesday free. Maybe we can squeeze a podcast in there. Who knows? We'll figure something out. But for the most part, life is good. And how's it going, Dom? I got to ask you just one more time because that's typically –
Oh, of course. I'm still doing good. I don't think my mood's changed in the last 20 seconds. I think we're doing good.
Lovely.
Hopefully you don't need to use that day off to watch a race. Hopefully we're racing on Sunday and not Tuesday in Homestead.
Yeah, I know they're calling for a little bit of rain down there, and it seems like there's been rain almost every race this year that we've gone to. So hopefully it stays away, and hopefully we can get some action in for a good Sunday night race.
And that, of course, and let's bring in Kevin. Kevin, we see the Detroit Lions hoodie on tonight. What's the deal with that?
Hey, I just picked up the random sweatshirt I found and picked it up. I went out to go DoorDash for a bit. It was like 40 degrees outside. And I was like, oh, crap. So I had to go grab a sweatshirt. And this was the first one I found. 0-16, the dream, baby.
40 degrees in June? It's June 12th.
Well, yeah, it was like 50, but it was really windy outside. It was actually kind of cold, not going to lie. But it's all right. Still wore shorts.
Of course. I am a big avid for short wearing throughout the year, 365 days of the year. It is shorts weather. Now, Steve, before we talk about your night, fun fact, you've lived in 2 states this year. What's going on with that?
Just trying to bounce back and forth between graduating college and now actually starting the real adult life. So just trying to get the hang of things and trying to adjust to life outside of school. But I guess since Kevin doesn't care about asking, how are you doing, Dom? Once again.
20 seconds later, I think I'm just getting more excited. I am just so ready to start talking about this race. But before we get into Martinsville, a state that's nowhere near Virginia, Ohio is where you were. How is the state of Ohio? I've only been there once.
Honestly, it's bad. But it's bad. Yeah, Kevin can attest to that.
It's terrible.
It's terrible, man. Thankfully, got out of there, got up to Minnesota here is a lot better. So a lot more areas to fish and things to see around here, things to do, because Ohio is a bunch of nothing.
You being in Minnesota now, are you Gophers or are we Buckeyes? Like what are we?
Gophers.
Better be
always.
Gophers. Better be Gophers.
Row the boat, baby.
All right.
All right. Well, some teams that weren't rowing the boat in Martinsville, well, they kind of wish they were racing in boats, was Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. I mean, you go to Martinsville, those are two names you were looking to get a top 5 at least, if not winning. And, in stage 1, they're going a lap down. And they're running outside the top 30. That included Brad Keselowski and some other guys. But those 3 names, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, outside the top 30 at the end of stage 1. That was shocking. They all started inside the top 12. Even with the caution early, managed to go a lap down with just about 15 laps to go in the stage. It was just a wacky start. And what proved to be for Busch and Hamlin just basically a race ender because they could never fight back. It really got people shaking their heads. It really surprised everybody. Nobody could expect that to happen. But could that be a lack of practice? Because it looked like they missed the setups really bad. But it hasn't seemed like that for those guys ever since we started racing 6 races ago. So for it to come at Martinsville at a track where Joe Gibbs Racing has been so good at, it was just unbelievable to see that happen. I think, when you look at the cause of it, the cause has to be lack of practice because they must have missed the heights really bad because there was nothing in-race adjustments could do to fix what was wrong with those cars. They needed that garage time to change heights and all that stuff, but just never got the time. And it just goes down as a wasted race, really, for those guys, and wasted opportunity to win. And now, could that hurt the any momentum they had built up? Denny Hamlin was on a roll, and now that run really doesn't help you. Kyle Busch still looking for his first win of the year. Something to look at for those guys. But one guy that did come back was Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski did come back. He did lead some laps. I'm going to go to Jordan for this one. Penske, they seem to be a powerhouse team right now. They finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at Martinsville. Do you think now they maybe surpass Joe Gibbs Racing as maybe the favorites at short tracks?
I think very well they could be. I'm going to use Ryan Blaney for an example. He started outside in the front row, and by, like you said, close to the end of stage 1, he was more towards the back of the pack, almost like on the verge of going a lap down. And back to the discussion as well, I think, some of that may have to do with this being the first time we're racing at night in Martinsville. No one's experienced a night race here, cooler temperatures and everything. So everyone's setups are basically, dialed in for running in the day. So no one was attested to racing at night. But I think when you look at Penske as a whole, as a team and organization, and how they were able to bounce back and be running up front in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th spots in the finishing order, I think, they do surpass Joe Gibbs because you look at recent races this year as well as we go to Bristol, up front at the end of the race. Yes, you had Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, but you also had Joey Logano. You had Brad Keselowski, and what was Ryan Blaney had the fastest car before he got taken out. So I think, all the Penske guys are running up front in all of these short track races. And it was another test to it when they were at Martinsville. Not all the Penske guys started up front, but by the end of the race, they all found their way up to the front in some way, shape, or form.
They did. It was a good race for Penske. Obviously, 1 spot short, and to a guy they really don't like, Martin Truex Jr. does get the win. And Wes, I want to ask you, talk about Ryan Blaney. He showed a lot of strength. He came from the back. He went that lap down early. Logano, his teammate, lapped him. He wasn't too happy about it either. Do you think Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano, do you think there could be a little, beef there maybe?
I think there very well could be. I feel like it's pretty hard staying teammates and being in such a close relationship for so long and not really having – we're trying to just always and continuously show support to one another because there's always going to be a little bit of animosity between drivers when they're on the racetrack, whether it is a teammate or whether it's just other schmo, essentially, that's you're competing against. So I feel like there's definitely going to be times where if you've had run-ins before, which we have seen them have prior run-ins a couple times on the track so far this year, and then it happens again here at Martinsville, that it makes sense for tempers to flare because you're not really supposed to see that between drivers on the track, especially if you're teammates. But I feel like it's something that if that does happen continuously, then it kind of leads to I don't know, just a little bit of frustration. So I did think we see that, or we saw that between the two at Martinsville, but we'll have to see how far it carries on the rest of the year because right now it seems like both are potential championship hunts or threats. They could have a very good chance to make it to the Final Four, and especially if they do that, I feel like that it's going to be pretty intense between the two, especially for the team.
And how much did this run for Blaney? You know, he did get the penalty later on in the race, had to go to the back of the line again, and did come back up toward the front to finish second. Do you think this shows how, tough that 12 team is? And do you think this was a run that could have them knocking on the door of a championship run?
I think they have all the capabilities to be a threat for the championship. I would say they need to aim for that consistency, but a lot of the consistency hasn't really come from the teams doing. It's been a lot of on-track incidents that Blaney has just been a part of that didn't really work out in his favor. Because if you look at it, every race, pretty much except Darlington, which is his known worst track, Blaney has been in the top 5 and a competitor for the win in every single race. So that's 9 out of 11 races. He could have had a top 5 finish, but nothing really materialized to the point for all of those for him to be able to capitalize on those finishes. So seeing him be able to run up front continuously like this, it just shows me 2 things. It shows me, one, that their team is doing a really good job. They're having great communication, and of course Penske, known for their teamwork and communication, really strong, powerful group. And I think we can definitely expect to see Blaney on the verge of a victory soon because it seems like it's going to happen at any point now, especially with these impressive finishes and runs. But I think even though he doesn't have a win yet, he still could be in the talks of a potential championship favorite because he has shown some of the fastest speed out of almost all the drivers in the field, even though those finishes aren't there.
Yeah, definitely. I think Ryan Blaney's one of those guys once he wins a race, he's going to just reel off. He's going to go on a streak, and he's going to win 3 or 4 or 5 races in a row. Not in a row maybe, but in a group. And, speaking of winning, we got to transition and, actually mention and talk about Martin Truex Jr. won the race. We got to talk about him. Steve, how, impressed are you with Martin Truex Jr. going back-to-back at Martinsville?
Yeah, it's crazy to see a couple of years back when Martin Truex Jr. was still with Michael Waltrip, and then his first year with Furniture Row Racing, you would have never thought to see him at the front at Martinsville, and all of a sudden he wins back-to-back races there. So I think we're finally seeing that 19 team finally hit their stride. It was a little bit of a rocky start for them, but I think we're finally starting to see the wheels turn and them starting to move in the right direction. And towards the end of the race, he was just the most dominant car again. It helps, though, with him having an experienced crew chief. Well, not a crew chief on the box, but with James Small being paired with Martin Truex Jr. on his team over the last couple of years, it helps that they have that chemistry. And I think that's only going to help the 19 team of Martin Truex Jr. and company just rattle off more wins and be a real championship threat again this season.
And with Martin Truex Jr. winning, he was the only Toyota to finish on the lead lap. I know I talked about it a little bit before with Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, but do you think this should lead to any concern with the Toyota camp, especially the Joe Gibbs camp? I think Christopher Bell, you give a little slack to. He hasn't raced there in years. And, Martinsville's a very tough track to go to, for your first Cup start.
Yeah, I think it was a little concerning for the Toyota teams, just in the fact that, like you said, Martin Truex was the only one on the lead lap as far as the Toyota camp. But, I think, like Jordan mentioned earlier, this was the first night race at Martinsville, and so everyone's still learning how to adjust their cars to the cooler temperatures at Martinsville. And I think next time we see a night race at Martinsville, I think you'll see the Toyotas be a lot more prepared coming into the race. So just I think they just need to put it behind them, focus on Homestead this weekend. I think they'll be just fine.
And Kevin, you hear Martinsville night race. I think that gets you hyped up. But did the night race at Martinsville really live up to the hype of, what we thought we were going to see?
I think it was a good race overall. As it was a Martinsville night race, so the hype was definitely up. I think there could have been a little bit more action in the race. But I thought it was really good. I think because it was a night race at a track like Martinsville, the expectations that we gave the race were probably a little bit too high for what it was realistically going to be. But I think overall the race was definitely good. It was definitely it led up to my expectations for sure. So
yeah, it was definitely an exciting race. Martinsville night. It's just the thought of it really gets you going. I really like the intro that Fox used coming into it. They used Blinding Lights by The Weeknd, a song everybody, is into right now. It's a song that can't be played enough. So it was a really nice touch by Fox to get everybody into the mood. And Kevin, do you think you saw enough, do you think maybe the drivers were a little more timid because we didn't see as many wrecks as we usually see at Martinsville?
yeah, I think because the fact it was a night race and like how Jordan said, their setups were tuned for the day race, and you go to nighttime, the track gets cooler and all that sort of stuff. So I think the drivers definitely were a little bit more conservative in that regards because they didn't know how their cars were going to react to the conditions on the racetrack. I think once they kind of got going though, I think stuff started to kind of ramp up a bit. And last week, we predicted whether we were going to have a last lap altercation, and we didn't, sadly. But I think the conditions of the race definitely played into the fact of how we didn't have as many wrecks in that usual kind of Martinsville type of race.
Yeah, I totally agree on all of that. And now we're going to take this into our Splash and Go fan mail section where our guys got 60 seconds to answer the fans' questions. The first question we're going to have everybody answer. So 60 seconds each. The question comes from Kevin again from Tom's River, New Jersey. Which driver has surprised you so far in 2020, good or bad? Wes, you're on the clock.
Which driver has surprised me, good or bad? I feel like the good, I'm going to stick with a guy that I actually talked about last week. I'm going to stick with Kurt Busch. I feel like Kurt Busch has had a really underrated and pretty impressive season thus far, and it feels like he just keeps getting better and better so far as we've gone through these 11 races. So I'm going to give him for my good. For bad, I'm going to go with Cole Custer. If Stuart Haas all of a sudden appears to be a little bit on the downfall, I wouldn't say so much with Kevin Harvick because Kevin Harvick looks the best, but you look at Cole Custer, he is not doing too hot in the points, looking worse than Suarez did last year. And I don't want to say that's like a real good comparison to make, but he just hasn't looked the best. So Cole Custer is my worst, and Kurt Busch is my most impressive.
All right, now we did say either, but Wes did take.
I went ahead. I had 6.
All right, Steve, you're on the clock.
I'm going to take the same approach as Wes here. I've got a good and bad. The good, I got John Hunter Nemechek. He's really been outperforming that front row motorsports equipment. Last couple of races have been on a little bit of a downslide for him. With the spin out at Atlanta, Martinsville is always a tough track for rookies, but we've really seen quick runs out of this 38 car, and I think it's only going to continue from here. The bad, I'm going to go with Cole Custer's teammate. I'm going with 10 of Erik Almirola. We, saw him a couple years ago. His first year with Stuart Haas did amazing, was probably right up there with Kevin Harvick. And now over the last couple years, especially this season, that crew chief change with Mike Bugaravich now just not working out. So something needs to change within that team.
All right, Kevin.
For good, I'm going to go with Alex Bowman. He's looked really strong the whole season. He has the win at Auto Club. He's looked really good at the mile and a half. And overall, he's always been there for me. But I think, with how good he's been doing this season, he's definitely exceeding the expectations that I had for him. And to go on the bad, I'm going to have to go with Matt Kenseth. I don't know where he's been at. He's sitting in the 42. So obviously it's not the best team out there, but, with him being a veteran, I expected a little bit better performance out of him. I know he's had some bad luck with blown tires and that sort of thing, stuff that's out of his control, but I definitely thought Matt Kenseth would be more of a contender than he is right now.
It's a good thing Brandon wasn't here.
Oh, yeah. And Brandon would be, oh, my God.
Matt Kenseth. I am not believing that. And Jordan.
Well, I'm going to go with Chase Elliott as the good on this one because I think Chase, ever since coming from this break has really hit the ground running, had momentum on the side, getting a win out at Charlotte as well. So I think Chase has been got the ball rolling, obviously, and has been putting in really strong performances up front. So if he's able to continue to do this, I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with throughout the season. But as for the bad, I'm going to one-up Wes and Steven and go with Stewart-Haas Racing as an organization. You might as well name it Kevin Harwick Motorsports like back in the day here because that's all you see right now. It's just Kevin Harwick running up front. And I'm going to use Atlanta last week as an example. Harwick just dominates the race, obviously, as we know Harwick's good at Atlanta. But when you are the only car that's running, like, obviously in the lead, but in the top 10, let alone maybe the top 15, because his teammates finished 17th, 18th, and 19th, maybe even, like, I think one of them finished at 20th, actually. So when you have that much of a comparison and that much, I want to say, of a gap between your own teammates, there's definitely something going on in that camp, and it's not looking good.
And then for me, I've got two champions for my picks. Good, Brad Keselowski. Did not expect this at all from Keselowski. Didn't expect him to have 2 wins at this point of the season. He got the bad end of the stick on the crew chief swaps. He got Jeremy Bowens, who hasn't had as much success in the past as Todd Gordon and Paul Wolfe. I thought Keselowski was going to have a mediocre year and maybe get a win or two, but he's looking really good. And for the bad, I'm going Kyle Busch. He may be 9th in points, but this is Kyle Busch we're talking about. This Kyle Busch used to be leading the points right now, but he is sitting there in 9th without a win and struggled at one of his best tracks. So Kyle Busch definitely got me a little worried for that 18 team. And our second question, it comes from Doug in Oklahoma. After a slow start to the season, will Christopher Bell and Cole Custer show improvement, and could we see one of them in victory lane this year? I'll give this one back to Jordan.
I think Christopher Bell has a very good shot to be in victory lane, especially as we get to some of these, hard handling tracks that you could say, like, I want to say Richmond, maybe. Richmond's one of his very good tracks, and maybe even when we get back to Phoenix, if we do go back to Phoenix, I will say. That's always been one of his best tracks for Christopher Bell, so I could see maybe he gets a shot there. But for Cole Custer on the other side, that team's been struggling as more than we can believe, honestly. Obviously, we thought, how Cole Custer ran in the Xfinity Series, we expected him to be up front, maybe in the top 10, top 15 at least, but not running top 25 or 30th even. So, I think Cole Custer, for all of us, has been a shocker to us, and wherever they're starting for these next couple races really proves where they have been this whole season.
There's some races that I've been watching and I've honestly forgotten that Cole Custer's been even in the field. He's just that far back that I forgot I was watching the race, and I'm like, oh, Cole Custer's in here.
Well, Wes, I want to get your opinion on this before we go to our picks. What were you thinking about Cole Custer there at the end of the Martinsville race?
Which part? Oh, yeah, definitely. Now I know. I had to think about it for a minute. Don't understand what Cole Custer's doing. Granted, he was on fresh tires, but then again, he's like, I don't even know where he is on the track. He's like almost 30th on the racetrack. And this man is holding up Bubba Wallace, who's got one of the best long-run cars. Bubba Wallace was flying at the end of that race, and apparently I missed most of the race, but I heard that he was really, really fast on the long runs throughout the race. So the fact that he's holding up probably one of the fastest cars on the track at that point of time from passing and getting into the top 10, it seemed a little bit pointless. I don't know what Cole Custer was really fighting for. But then again, it's just part of the racing deal. I feel like he just maybe wasn't told the right advice going out there on the track. And I don't know if there were any cars on the lead lap that he was competing with, or not on the lead lap, but on the same lap as him that he was competing with. But I didn't think it was a great move on his part. I thought he could have shown a little more respect. There was nobody behind him. He had fresh tires. And plus he was holding up 2 guys battling for a top 10, which is a pretty important position. You get pretty more stats if you're in the top 10 than you are if you finish 11th. So, but that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, Cole Custer definitely. I thought for a second there he was going to make it 3 wide on Jimmy Johnson and Bubba Wallace. I mean, if you didn't pay attention to the race at all, you would have thought Cole Custer was hungry in 12 sitting there trying to get 10th. Because, I mean, 12, 32nd, I mean, Cole Custer didn't know the difference.
Yeah, he was fighting for it. He really wanted that spot for 29th, apparently. But that wasn't 29th, but it's all good. Well, he'll move on to the next week, and we'll have to see. Homestead's one of his better tracks, and maybe he actually will be a competitor this week.
And speaking of Homestead, we're going to move into our race picks. You know how we do them. We can't pick the same guy twice in a row. Unfortunately, nobody picked Martin Truex Jr. last week, so nobody gets on the board. So you still got Stephen West tied at 1. We're going to let Brandon pick first. He's not here today. He'll be here for the next podcast. He ended up picking Ryan Blaney. So now we're going to move to Jordan. Jordan, who you have winning at Homestead?
Well, you know, as we all know, Homestead has been known as the last race of the year. So normally the person who's won the race at Homestead has been the champion. So I'm going to go with the guy who's won 2 championships there in the last couple of years, and that is the number 18 of Kyle Busch. I think that team has been very experienced at Homestead. You know, they know how to get it done, obviously, and I think he's going to use that experience to fight his way back. It's a 1.5 mile track. We all know how he is a 1.5 mile, so I think Homestead is going to be a track that fits right into his wheelhouse.
Yeah, Kyle Busch, definitely a good pick. Steve, I mean, you just jinxed Denny Hamlin last week. What was that?
Really did. I was super confident in it, so I'm pumping the brakes a little bit. I'm still going with a safe pick, I feel like. I'm not going to make the same mistake that I did at Atlanta with this pick. So this guy has finished in the top 10 at Homestead the last 12 races that they've done there, including top 5s every year since he's been at Stewart-Haas Racing. It's the 4 of Kevin Harwick, and including a win there in 2014. I say Kevin Harwick gets another win at Homestead Miami Speedway and punch his ticket, not to the championship yet because it's not the finale race, but punches another win in the history books.
Now I get to go. You know, I picked William Byron. He got an 8th place finish. Wasn't too bad, but I need to get on the board. I'm sick and tired of sitting there with this goose egg. I am getting on the board this weekend. There's no better driver to pick than fellow New Jerseyan Martin Truex Jr. It's been a while for Martin Truex Jr. since he's won. I mean, it's been a few days. He's due to win again. Martin Truex Jr. won the championship there in 2017. Arguably had the best car there last year if it wasn't for the crew putting the rights on the left and the lefts on the right. I think Martin Truex Jr. is going to dominate this race, and he's going to go back-to-back. Martin Truex Jr. winning at Homestead.
The man wins one race, and he gets picked on the next episode.
Hey, I've been making some bold picks, but this one is far from bold. I just want to get on the board. And now, Wes, he picked pretty well last week. He picked Brad Keselowski. He led some laps. Looked like he may have gotten another win, but it didn't happen. Who's going to get you win number 2 this week?
Well, you just talked about not being bold. I'm going to be a little bit bold with this pick. Just have a little bit of fun. I'm actually going to go Tyler Reddick. I know he's a rookie this year, but if you look at his stats in Xfinity and the Truck Series, he's already has 2 wins. He's finished in the top 5 in every race he's been in at Homestead. And this year, you could say that, of course, he's driving in a different car. Of course, this is a different aero package. But he has shown some incredible speed this year. So the fact that he's going into this race is with Richard Childress known to have really good qualifying speed. I think we could expect him to qualify up front. And with how well he works the high line of the racetrack and the fact that that's just seems to be one of his best tracks in his arsenal, I think that we could expect him to be up front competing in the top 5 most of the race. So I think if he can put himself in the prime opportunity to get up front, I think we could see Tyler Reddick score his first victory. And I think it's going to come here at his best track. Definitely
a solid pick. You know, I really didn't think about Tyler Reddick. but I wouldn't count him out. And Kevin, you came up one spot short of joining Steve and Wes. How are you going to get that one spot better? Who's it going to be?
Yeah, you guys all took mine. Jordan took my first one, and then Steve took Harwick, and then Dom took Truex. And now I'm sitting here at the bottom, not knowing who to choose. But I'm going to go with Erik Jones in the 20. He finished third last year at Homestead. He did get 37 points, showing that he was consistent in the stages, as well as finishing third. So I'm going to go with him. I haven't picked him all year. I feel like, this could be a race where he could kind of come out, kind of end that bad luck and maybe get a dub here. So we'll see.
And Wes, what win is he looking for?
Erik Jones will be looking for his first ever win
in the Cup Series.
Dude is the unluckiest driver in NASCAR.
The unluckiest driver will be looking for his first ever win. I can't wait.
Hope he wins. The car's ready for the dumpster.
So we have 3 Gibbs guys being picked. Everyone but Denny Hamlin. Don't count out Denny Hamlin this week. Denny Hamlin has 2 wins at the track. He's starting on pole. Denny Hamlin could be looking to come back. He's got Chris Gabehart back on the box.
As long as they don't put a piece of bear bond on the grill.
Yeah, we don't need to bring that back up. Yeah, that was unfortunate. Denny Hamlin had a chance. I mean, I thought he had a better car than Kyle Busch, but it just did not happen for him. But anyways, we're going to let you guys enjoy the race on Sunday. We're going to be back to break it all down and then make our picks for Talladega. Definitely easy to pick there. So
Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Hey, he will be racing.
Yeah, he will be in the
Xfinity
race.
Series. He will be racing in the Xfinity Series.
He will be racing.
Fans probably, we have a mixed bag of fans. They'll be happy. They'll be upset because a Cup guy in the Xfinity Series, but it's Dale Earnhardt Jr.
It's Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Oh, yeah. And then you got Kyle Busch in the Truck Series. So
and hopefully fans are allowed back in the stands at Talladega.
Hey.
And we do have 1,000 of our military in the stands for Homestead. No, Brandon is not going to be in the stands for Homestead. But we'll see what goes down at Homestead. We will see you guys after Homestead, and we will preview Talladega. Have a good one.
Yeah.